Hey gang, it's Squill. And with the Fiona and Cake spin-off coming out sometime this year, I figured now would be the best time to give my thoughts on the first 5 Fiona and Cake episodes of the original Adventure Time series. And we might as well do it in a ranking video, because ranking videos are fun. I'm just gonna give a little disclaimer here though. I'm not the biggest Fiona and Cake fan. I don't dislike most of their episodes, but the characters just never really did anything for me. Most of them just feel like watered down versions of their original counterparts. This does not mean, however, that I'm not excited for the Fiona and Cake spin-off. If anything, I'm actually really excited, not just for what they do with Simon and the multiverse angle, but for how they flesh out Fiona and Cake as characters and make me like them more. This might be a weird comparison, but Jimmy McGill / Saul Goodman is my favorite character in the Breaking Bad universe and one of my favorite fictional characters of all time, and that's entirely because of Better Call Saul and has very little to do with his role in Breaking Bad. So that just proves that a spin-off can make me like a character more than I did in their original show. So with all that said and out of the way, this is every Fiona and Cake episode of Adventure Time ranked. At number 5, we have The Prince Who Wanted Everything. I don't care. Those 3 words summarize my exact thoughts on The Prince Who Wanted Everything. It is an utterly joyless experience and a complete slog to get through. I'm already not the biggest LSP fan, particularly when she's given a major role, with a few exceptions like Bad Timing and Elements. But my glob, Lumpy Space Prince is somehow even worse. He's just so pretentious and self-entitled, which I get is the point, but it doesn't make him a likable or sympathetic protagonist. Why should I care about his relationship with his parents? He's such a nothing character. Say what you will about the Jake and Warren stuff and Jake the Star Child, but at least you like Jake and want to root for him. LSP portraying her parents as this monster is also sort of weird from a characterization standpoint. Like, she already made up with them at the end of The Monster, which was all the way back in season 3. Maybe she's just mad at them again for a different reason, but I don't know, it's still kinda weird. And I hate his stupid anime face too, it looks so dumb. Oh, and this episode might have the worst song in the entire show, it's so bad. Like, goddamn you guys, I get Rebecca Sugarloaf, but wow, this just sounds like a Barney the Dinosaur song. The Prince Who Wanted Everything is a miserable experience, and one of my least favorite episodes of the entire show. But hey, at least this Ice King joke was kinda funny. At number 4, we have Fiona and Cake and Fiona. Okay, unlike The Prince Who Wanted Everything, I do have good things to say about Fiona and Cake and Fiona, even if I dislike the episode as a whole. First off, I really like this opening with Finn, Jake, and BMO. Not gonna lie, when I was rewatching all these episodes, I was kinda starting to miss Finn and Jake, so it was great to see them again. And due to the nature of this being an Ice King heavy episode, he obviously gets some great lines. I like this joke about where he does all his deep thinking in particular. But despite all of that, I can't get over the fact that this episode is one huge tease. It just feels so gimmicky, introducing the real Fiona. Only for the episode to go, no, JK, it's a fake. And I know it was done this way so they could have the episode end on a cliffhanger leading into the spin-off. But man, they didn't have to make the story this much of a throwaway. The mystery behind the tape in this episode is a complete misdirect. The mummy being the Queen of Vu has nothing to do with Fiona being a fake. And sure, Ice King managed to figure that out with his weird Ice King logic, but no reasonable person would have guessed that based on the tape. And the Fiona and Cake segments themselves are pretty whatever. It's a very throwaway story that has nothing to do with the main plot of the episode. Despite its positive qualities, Fiona and Cake and Fiona is a frustratingly tedious episode, and completely pointless outside of its last second. At number 3, we have 5 Short Tables. Combining a Fiona and Cake episode with a Graybles episode is a pretty neat concept, but in execution, Most of these stories just aren't very interesting, with only 1 or 2 standout moments. I might as well discuss these segments in order since I don't have a ton to say about most of them. The first segment and through line of Cake making narrative flapjacks of everyone is really boring. I get that most Grable's episodes begin with a Finn and Jake segment, have it continue in later segments, and then pay it off at the end of the episode, and those are all fine and good. But Fiona and Cake making flapjacks just isn't very interesting or funny. The second segment is great and easily my favorite of the bunch. I love just how quickly Butterscotch Butler is able to dissect Gumball's fears and anxieties, as well as how Gumball's hubris is a reflection of Princess Bubblegum's. The third segment is really boring and I have nothing to say about it. The fourth segment is also boring, but it's at least cool to hear Donald Glover reprise his role as Marshall Lee. It's also pretty epic that Lumpy Space Prince didn't keep his obnoxious voice and stupid anime face from the Prince Who Wanted Everything. Now he's only mildly annoying. And I really like the way the final segment begins, with Flynn the human being, Jock the raccoon, and the ice president. It's pretty funny knowing there are layers of Fiona and Cakes within Fiona and Cake. But I kinda wish the episode took this concept further and showed us more layers of fanfiction. That could have been an entire segment, or heck, even an entire episode. But whatever, the rest of the segment is fine, it pays off the Flapjack story from the beginning, it's whatever. Ultimately, 5 Short Tables is perfectly harmless and I don't have a problem watching it, it's just very forgettable. At number 2, we have Fiona and Cake. Yeah, the first Fiona and Cake episode is pretty decent actually. The story is pretty solid, and there's definitely a novelty to seeing the gender-flipped versions of these characters for the first time. But while the story definitely works, it doesn't really do anything all too interesting. Like, if this was just a regular episode of Adventure Time, it would be super bland and disposable. But while I can say that nowadays, for its time, it was definitely an interesting and memorable episode. This was definitely the episode I heard other kids talk about the most back when I was a kid. Kids who otherwise barely even talked about Adventure Time. While the episode doesn't really do much for me nowadays, there are still certain moments I really like. The musical number is easily the highlight of the episode. Not only is the song itself great, but the visuals that accompany it are absolutely gorgeous. I also really like the message of this episode, that you should value yourself as an individual above whether or not you're in a relationship. Heck, that's something Finn himself would come to learn much later on in the show's run. And the twist that this was all written by the Ice King is still pretty funny. Ultimately, there's nothing particularly wrong with the first Fiona and Cake episode. It just doesn't really do anything that grabs me personally. It's an episode I respect more than I actually like. And my favorite Fiona and Cake episode of Adventure Time is Bad Little Boy. Despite being the fan favorite Fiona and Cake episode, I actually wasn't sure for a while whether or not I wanted to put Bad Little Boy at number 1. Because the actual Fiona and Cake stuff doesn't start until about 3.5 minutes in, the actual plot of this episode is pretty light. Like, it's pretty much just a concert set piece and then Marshall Lee kidnapping Cake. Not the most inspired plotline out there. Also, I've never been the biggest fan of the shipping angle between Marshall Lee and Fiona. Yeah, Marceline was a little flirty towards Finn in Evicted, but that was her first appearance. She was clearly just trying to mess with him. And since then, their relationship has been strictly platonic. So I don't really understand why Marceline would write herself and Finn this way. It just never sat right with me. But despite my criticisms, I can't deny that Marshall Lee is easily the most compelling character within the Fiona and Cake saga. This is one of those episodes that's even better with the context of Obsidian, since we get to see how she views herself as a monster who pushes everyone away. He's like if all of Marceline's worst qualities were heightened. I also think this says a lot about Marceline's relationship with Finn, how he's one of the only people to really see the good in Marceline without pushing her away. It almost makes you wonder if Marcy feels guilty for being friends with Finn. Donald Glover does an excellent performance as Marshall Lee. Both of his musical numbers in this episode are super catchy and memorable. The episode is gorgeous from a visual standpoint as well. There's a great sense of atmosphere, especially during the climax. I even like all the stuff outside of the main story. This opening is so hilariously over the top and ridiculous, and I kinda wish all Fiona and Cake episodes were this unhinged. And as brief as they are, I love all of the interactions between Marceline and Ice King in this episode. This is the first time we've seen them interact after the reconciliation at the end of I Remember You. And it's sweet seeing them hang out casually without even bringing up their baggage at all. A part of me does still wish this opening was shorter, or the episode itself could have been longer to flesh out the main story more, but I'd still rather have this opening than not. I still can say Bad Little Boy is one of my favorite Adventure Time episodes ever. I mean, it didn't even make the honorable mentions for my Season 5 list, and I still have the problems with it that I do. But I do think it's a little better than I initially gave it credit for, and it's definitely the peak of the Fiona and Cake episodes. And that's how I'd rank the 5 Fiona and Cake episodes of Adventure Time. As I said before, please don't take my lack of enthusiasm for most of these episodes as a sign that I'm not excited for the spin-off. I actually have a lot of faith that the Adventure Time crew will be able to pull this off. And even if Fiona and Cake themselves aren't that interesting, I'm sure at the very least Simon will carry the series. So please let me know how you'd rank these episodes in the comments, as well as what your hopes are for the Fiona and Cake spin-off. Squill, out.